I think is the challenge in terms of the whole human rights discussion, and one reason why I was very hopeful that the new Human Rights Council in Geneva could help us in maybe get a better handle on the whole human rights issue internationally, was that over the last few years human rights has become so politicized that we have been very difficult to deal with it for a number of reasons. And although again human rights can never be depoliticized, it's always going to be a very political item. But I think the challenge, not least from the UN side, is that we have to somehow get away from a lot of calling names, and we have to also realize that human rights also means capacity building, assisting countries with their human rights situation. For example, our own country is involved with some countries. We have a so-called human rights dialogue, and which I personally have found very interesting, where, for example, we have had one with China, a human rights dialogue with China, where Chinese prisons officials have come to Norway to see how you can run a prison system without using torture, for example. Very practical things, and we ourselves might even have things to learn from the Chinese system, the way it works. It works, can work, and should work both ways. And there are some of these things that have not really been fully utilized and tested, and it means that, and I think there are more to be gained, and but it means also that when we have the debates on human rights, it's very easy to criticize and then feel good afterwards. But the challenge obviously is to make sure that human rights is implemented on the grounds in the lives of real people, and that requires a pretty sophisticated approach, long-term approach, patient approach, and where both, not least the United States, but where everybody has a role to play.
Thank you. Another student.
In the past few days, Norwegian diplomats have met with the new Hamas-led unity government in Palestine and have received much criticism from other Western democracies. How would you respond to that criticism?
I think that when the government decided to recognize the new unity government in Palestine, I think this was in recognition of one basic fact, that the Palestinians were destroying each other. They have ended up in a terrible situation, and when they now managed finally to form a unity government, it was necessary for the international community in one way or another to start dealing with that government in order to get a handle on the situation, and so that was at the basis of our own decision to recognize, and basically we have decided to take the platform adopted by this unity government at face value. And yes, it does not go far enough in terms of recognizing two-state solution, Israel's right to exist, etc. But we look upon it as a process, and I think by engaging them and we had our Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs there meeting with the Prime Minister and others, and I think that our messages were very clear and were understood, and I think that we had to engage the new government in order to move on.
And Victoria from Sierra Leone.
Thank you, Ambassador, for allaying our fears with regards to what the Peace Building Commission is actually doing. Because I'm actually optimistic, because presently my country was chosen as one of those countries being considered by the Peace Building Commission. But I must say that I have one or two areas of concern. throw light on. The first is the issue of ex-child combatants. You know, you just mentioned that this building is finding job. One of the issues they are tackling is finding jobs for ex-combatants. But what about child ex-combatants? Because quite recently I am the expert in my mission who follows the third committee. And in one of the reports that was before the third committee mention was made of a child combatant from Sierra Leone who was interviewed by some UNICEF officers. I mean, he after the war in Sierra Leone, he moved on to Côte d'Ivoire, apparently because he was rejected by his community for the atrocities he committed. And when the war ended in Liberia, he decided to move on to the Côte d'Ivoire. Why? Because, well, under the guise of, I'm trying to find job. Because as far as he was concerned, war was a kind of job for him. That is what he has learned to do best, because he was conscripted at a very, very early age. So talking about job and creation for them, the point I'm trying to make is that these people who are conscripted to fight at a very, very early age, and they have not learned anything to do. What they know best to do is to fight. Now, we are trying to do away with war. What kind of jobs would you give to those type of people who do not have the adequate training that would earn them the decent income that will keep them away from mischief? That is my first area of concern. And then the second area of concern is the issue of mainstreaming gender issues into the work of this building commission. I would just like to know if the PBC is considering that issue as well.
As regards the issue of child soldiers, it's a terrible tragedy, and these people, the kids themselves, as you alluded to, obviously will need special attention. And I think that one of the areas where probably things can be done is again through the education system. Some of them I think will have to be obviously re-educated, and both in schooling and universities will be one way, and which is why it's so important, for example, that in a peace building strategy that you consider the importance of what you offer young people, and then primarily you will have to think about education. In Burundi, again, for example, the government has already taken the consequence of this, and in fact have now basically succeeded to put everybody, all kids, back in school again, which is no small achievement, costly, and deserves a lot of support in terms of dealing also with some of the issues that you are alluding to. And your second question was? The gender issue, yes. It is, in fact, in the founding resolution, it's quite clear that the whole issue of gender is something that the Commission is going to look at. In fact, we were discussing it at the UN even today. In terms of our visit to Burundi, for example, we will meet with women organizations and keep a special eye on their situation and what can be done. It's obvious that women have suffered tremendously during these conflicts. So this is a very important issue indeed.
Good night. You said that peace building is not free. I would like to know if there's any tactic that can be taken that is less expensive, considering that there's countries that cannot or do not receive external help.
I wish there were other alternatives to transferring aid, but frankly, I think that aid is going to be on the agenda as an important item. That being said, I think it also is important for also the countries coming out of conflict with